Hey guys, bjthebrave here, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to do an essential Legendaries crafting guide. That's right, we're going to go through every single faction and we're going to look at it as a new beginner coming in, thinking about those precious wild cards. What should you be spending your cards on? We've all been there, we've made that mistake, we've jumped in and things have gone wrong, and it's a long way back. So hopefully this is going to be really helpful in your collection. Just before we get started, I just want to say a massive thank you. The feedback so far to the content's been really positive. Loads of great comments, and I'm really glad you're enjoying it. It's the reason I'm doing this, and I'm hoping this game's going to grow and we can make more and more great content for you. If you do like it, then hit that like button below, subscribe to the channel, and obviously you'll get all the notifications when new content comes out. So let's jump in. Now, if you haven't already seen my video on the 8 common mistakes in Warpforge, I suggest going and looking at that because some of those relate to this video, so that'd be a good one to look at. But one of the things that we did talk about briefly in there is the idea of when it comes to crafting legendaries, you want to, if you're doing a premium campaign, I would always advise that you finish the campaign, i.e. you get to the end of the trail where you get a random legendary and a choice, a wild card legendary. Wait till you get those options before you go ahead and craft, and the reason for that is that you may well open up a legendary or craft a legendary, and then when you open that random slot you may get the same one that you already have, and that's a disaster and a complete inefficient use of your for your collection. So definitely wait until you finish the premium campaign, especially if it's the faction that you want to spend most of your time building good decks for. So with that said, let's jump in. So we're going to start off with the Space Marines. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk through, in my opinion, and obviously you can have a different opinion, other content creators I'm sure to have a different opinion. This is just my thoughts and my opinion. I speak to a lot of top players in the community as well, so it's not just my opinion, but it's a synthesis of that on where we think. So when it comes to Space Marines, Ultramarines, the good thing about the Ultramarines is that you don't actually need many of the legendaries to make a really good deck. So they're actually a fantastic beginner faction because they're, first of all, they're very powerful, and second of all, a powerful deck doesn't require too many legendaries. So in that sense, it kind of makes the crafting guide a little bit easier. What I would say is, in the current meta, this has been recorded in November 2023, I would say that I would craft Manius Calgar as my first legendary, and that is because Calgar is a fantastic card. He is super flexible. You could run an aggro deck with him, a mid-range or a control or a vehicle deck, all sorts of different builds, and his ability to just keep on drawing and keep getting you the fantastic resources you need to win is not to be underestimated. That is an incredibly powerful ability in any card game, and of course it is in Warpforge. So in the current meta, I would suggest Calgar is a really strong first build. I would then say that in the current meta, the only other legendary that you really need to craft is Humanity's Shield. Now again, this could change as the meta shifts, but right now this card is absolutely fantastic. It's super powerful. Often when you have two very powerful decks going up against each other, when it gets down to the end game, it's often very close, and you might win, or I might win next turn, or you win the turn after. It's really down to a couple of turns, and what Humanity's Shield does is it essentially buys you, as the Ultramarine player, that extra turn. So imagine I've got you down to 2 health, or I've got you down to 5 health, and I'm going to hit you with a spell to kind of win the game, and you go, not today, I'm going to pop my Humanity's Shield on, and now your Wailing Doom or even your troops on the board can't do anything. This ability makes your Warlord completely invulnerable, can't even take 1 damage until the next turn. So super powerful card right now, fits into a lot of meta decks. I would say for Marines, they're the only 2. Now, if you're building your Ultramarine collection, not necessarily for the now and for the current meta, but you're thinking more about the game in terms of where's it going to go over the next year or two, and what's going to allow me to build, let's say, a range of really flexible decks, and as new cards come out, what's still going to be good, then that does open up the Ultramarine collection a little bit further. So I want to talk about a few of the cards. The first thing I would say is that I do think that Sicarius and Avenging Zeal are bad cards, and I think that you know, when you look at the 8-9 cost, they've really got to do something incredibly powerful for that cost. And unfortunately for me, they're both too slow, and their effects are just not justifying that that price tag. So there's no way I would be advising you to craft those. They could get changed in the future, but right now I wouldn't say so. So a few that are reasonable. So the first one is Battlefield Supremacy. So this card says lower the cost of all vehicles in your hand and deck by 1. Draw a vehicle from your deck. Now, obviously, if we're playing a vehicle-orientated deck, the fact that for 3 mana we draw a card, which is only 1 mana more than 1 energy more than Manius Calgar's ability, and guaranteeing that vehicle synergy, that in itself is pretty good, right? And it's thinning our deck out and drawing cards that we need. But the fact that it is lowering the cost of all your vehicles, not just in your hand, but in your entire deck, is fantastic. So right now, I'm not convinced that the vehicle deck is in a strong place right now. It's certainly a fun deck, a fun option to play and a good theme. But I do think that this archetype is going to have its day in the light, day in the sun, should I say, one day. So I do think that this is a pretty good card. It's definitely one worth crafting if you're kind of keen to play around with the Ultramarine vehicles and play around with that archetype. Similarly, in the same breath, Antario Kronos is the same vein, because this is also a synergistic card with the vehicles, and when it comes off, this is brilliant. First of all, for 4 mana, it's a really strong body. It doesn't have a massive weakness early game, whether it's on the melee or the range damage, and it comes with 5 health. I always think when you get 1 extra point of health over the energy curve, that's quite a good body. So really good body that you're getting. But obviously, if it survives, and then the next turn you can play a vehicle, that vehicle getting a flank ability is fantastic. I've done that where the dreadnoughts come down and had flank, and it's game winning. So another really pretty good. I would say these two, if you're really keen on the vehicle synergy, then these two are the ones you might want to look at. And then I would say for me that the Sergeant Tillian is in theory a fantastic card. Now, not many people are finding efficient ways to make Tillian work. I think the problem is that early game, especially good players, they will trade your card. You will be trading your cards with their cards quite efficiently. So by the time you hit turn 5, they won't actually be much of a board to benefit from Tillian's ability. However, where Tillian can be really good is, say, turn 7, 8, a bit later on in the game, where you're able to either play, let's say, a flanking unit with Tillian, and then the flanking unit benefits from the sniper ability, something like that. That can be definitely game turning, right? It can really swing the tempo and the control of the board. So this is definitely on in theory a very powerful card, but getting it to work consistently in practice is going to take a lot of skill and probably some pretty good deck building around it. So I would say right now, I would say Calgar and Humanity's Shield should be your focus. And then I think if you're thinking more in the long term, then you want to be looking at the vehicle synergy, legendaries, and Sergeant Tillian. The last one is the Librarian. I'm not going to go through every legendary. I wasn't planning on doing, but I think the Librarian is a kind of like decent legendary. It's not bad, but it's not mind-blowing either. The only thing I think at the minute is that it's just a little bit slow. You know, most games are kind of ended by turn 8, turn 9. So how often are you going to get to benefit from that draw? But that said, it's got a pretty good body again with the 8 health and the 8 melee attack, and you know, it's still got 5 range attack as well. So it's not a bad card at all, but I wouldn't say it's as top tier as some of the other legendaries that we spoke about. Okay, so moving on to the Orks. So for the Orks, I would say that unlike Manius Calgar, our legendary boss is Ghazghkull Thraka, and right now I don't think that he is essential. Anyone who's into the Warhammer 40k will probably love Ghazghkull and love him from a lore point of view, and he's obviously the main war boss of the Orcs, so that's cool. But actually, in terms of his ability, it's a little bit wanting at the minute, and it can be very powerful in the right situation, but it is very situational. So I would actually say that my first legendary that I'd be looking to craft in Orcs is Makari the Grot. It doesn't matter, guys, whether you're playing aggro, mid-range, vehicle synergy, control. This card is insanely good. I can't see how this card doesn't get nerfed, and that's perhaps The only caveat to crafting it right now is that it probably is going to get some sort of toning down. It's probably in the top 3 legendary cards in the game. It is insane. And why is it insane? Because it essentially boosts the melee attack, leading to all sorts of combos, the melee attack of its 2 neighbouring units, including your war boss. And if it gets killed, it just simply returns to your hand. So you can replay it for a simple 1 mana. Of course, if you play things like the Green Horde, that gets reduced to 0 mana. You can combo it with the Orc Knob, so it just keeps on coming on and on and on when it's at 0 mana, and so it essentially acts as a board clear. The card is insane. It has so many good rolls. I would say this should be your first craft as an Orc player. Your second craft, I would look for the Orc Knob. The Orc Knob costs you 4 energy, comes with a fantastic body, 5 health. Again, we're looking at 1 point more health than the energy, so we ticks that box. And then at 4/4 across the melee and range, so it doesn't have a weakness there. The fantastic ability that it has, the super powerful ability of allowing other friendly troops to have flank. We know in all the factions, wherever we see this ability, that it's super powerful, right? The ability to play a troop on board and immediately kill something that didn't even have flank originally is bordering on broken, right? In terms of how easy it is to swing the game and swing the tempo. Now, the only thing I would say with and point as a real benefit is, in this particular faction, you've got things like the Green Horde, which can discount all your other troops, so you're even more likely to play this card with those synergistic cards. So it can slot again into tempo decks, into aggro decks, and into control decks. So I think Orc Knob will be a staple in just about every Orc deck. So I would strongly suggest that he is hot on the heels of Makari, and that should be your second legendary that you craft. Now, a real fun one, and probably the third legendary you could look for, is Rock Invasion. Now, Rock Invasion is really cool. It's one of your game finishers, particularly in a control build. Look, guys, it costs 10 energy, right? Like, I keep saying mana, but it's energy in this game, isn't it? It costs 10 energy. And I think the problem is in some games you're just not going to get there. But in a control build, you will, because you're going to build lots of tools to delay and stall the game. So it's a lot of fun. It brings down 8 random Orc infantry, and that includes legendary infantry. So it's a lot of fun. It's proper Orcish, and it wins you the game. So I would definitely suggest that. It's quite a cool one, even in a beginner deck, that you can kind of beat more powerful decks by playing this. So if you draw it and you play it, well done. Definitely a fun one, and I would recommend that to be your third. Or the only other one that I would say is a contestant is the Prophet of the War. Now, the Prophet of the War is a little bit of what I call a consistency and a flexibility card. I really like this type of card. I wouldn't actually be offended if someone said this should be your first legendary craft, and that's because of that flexibility. So whatever deck you're building, whatever your collection is, this is going to be helpful. If you need removal, you can grab it from this. If you need the Green Horde to get fill the board with troops, you can grab it from this. So it really does offer a ton of flexibility. It chooses a stratagem from your deck. The only thing you've got to obviously be mindful of when you're playing this card is how many stratagems you put into your deck when building your actual list out. So you kind of need to design your list around it and make sure you don't have too many, so that you can be kind of consistent in what you choose. It's a great card. You can manage without it, though. That's probably why I wouldn't pick it above Makari. But I would definitely say it's a really strong legendary, and perhaps for me it would be either the third or the fourth legendary that I would be looking to craft. Honestly, guys, right now, all the others are pretty meh. I wouldn't say that they are a priority. Wait until you get those first. Mech Boy is actually a good card in itself, and of course has good synergy with the vehicles, except the only issue is that a kind of all vehicle army is not very good right now. But this can work well if you've got Dreadnought or some War Bikers or something like that in your hand to kind of help discount them. So this is a pretty good one, but it's certainly not in the same league as the other ones that we just discussed. Okay, so let's move on to the Eldar, or the Eldari. So, what would I craft first? Honestly, guys, I think the first card I would want to craft with the Eldar, it depends a little bit on what kind of build you are actually looking to do. Like, are you wanting to do a kind of like aggro deck, or are you wanting to do a kind of more mid-range or control? But I would say that the there's quite a lot of good legendaries in Eldar. Yeah, so this is good news, and but it's an expensive faction. So let's have a look. So the boss themselves, Zephlade, I would say is a low priority. I think the others are both better than him. So again, we don't need to worry about that. Now the Dance of Death is definitely up there. I think this should be in your top 3, and the reason is that giving Shuriken 2 to your boss means that you're essentially doing 4 damage every single turn if you want to. And that is super flexible with melee or ranged attack. You get that extra bonus 2 damage. It can help you win the racing to sort of burn your opponent down. And obviously it can really help with the removal, because instead of doing 2, you're now doing 4 damage. So it's a very, very powerful spell that lasts the rest of the game, essentially. Outside of that, I would say that the 3 that you want to look for as a priority are Wailing Doom, which is a great finisher. It does 8 damage to the enemy, so you can have incredible reach, and any kind of tempo or aggro deck wants to play Wailing Doom. It can finish the game, it can win you games, and it often will. So it's a super powerful finisher, and you can play it from hand. If you want to play the extra 2 Spirit Stones, it also deals 4 damage to units adjacent, so like the Blast ability. So say somebody puts up a Vanguard unit next to the boss because they're really low on health, you can actually Wailing Doom the Vanguard unit and then still do 4 damage to the enemy war boss. So it's a really great card, and potentially, you know, that this could be the first one that you craft. It's between that and Dancing Death for me. Dance of Death would be the first one. Really close. They're both very good. And then I think for the second one, it's really close between Fireheart and the Striking Scorpion Exarch. I would probably lean towards Fireheart. Fireheart is strong in itself because it's a flanking ability, and flanking abilities that are flyers are always very, very powerful. They can't be attacked back from melee. Because this guy has a high melee attack, most flyers have really high range attack but low melee attack. So what this guy does is, because he's a flyer, he can attack enemy flyers but use his melee attack. That's a rare ability in the game, and that means that he often trades with quite powerful units quite effectively. And on top of that, if he survives, which he probably will because you've attacked with his melee and not his ranged, that survival means that the adjacent units to Fireheart then get invulnerable, which is awesome, right? Because if you've got 2 units next to them, you attack with Fireheart first, make those invulnerable, they can then just smash into units and trade, and instead of dying whilst killing the opponent, you're invulnerable, so you just stand there, full health doesn't move, and you make the trade. So it's a huge tempo swing. Timing is important, as you would expect from an Eldar approach, but it's incredibly powerful. So I would go with Fireheart as my next one. And as I said, after that, I would go with the Striking Scorpion Exarch. This card is insane. It is stealthed. It's quite hard to get removed even through something like AoE. You want to be mindful of playing it on its own when you're playing things like Orks, where they have abilities like No Mucking About, which just kills a unit, and obviously if you're the only unit there, you would die. But outside of that, it's very, very hard to remove because of the stealth. And then when it attacks, even if it dies, it leaves a waystone, but when it attacks, it does 8 damage potentially, because you've got 4 melee and 4 shurikens. So 4 shuriken often can clear a unit without you even taking any damage back. So it's a super powerful card, and again, even if you want to attack the enemy warlord, that's 8 damage from one card. So it's very, very good. There would definitely be my priorities for the Eldar. The only ones I would consider outside of that, I do think Spirit Seer and Host of the Dead are both powerful cards. Host of the Dead is a bit like a Tomb World or a Rock Invasion for the Eldar. It kind of like, if you've got loads of Spirit Stones, you know, you deploy a Wraith Guard for each one. Obviously, you fill your board with Wraith Guards. It could be game winning. But it does depend on playing a specific type of deck and having lots of stones. And I just don't think overall it's as flexible and as powerful as the other cards that we've talked about. Okay, so moving on to the Necrons. Necrons were the first faction that I collected, and I can tell you now, the first legendary I crafted with much glee and enthusiasm was the Tomb World. The Tomb World is insane, guys. Like, this card is... It's one of the reasons you play Necrons. The Necron control deck is one of the most powerful decks. It's definitely right up there in the top 5 meta decks right now, and it's mainly down... Not mainly, but... partly down to Tomb World. So we know with this deck that we can sometimes trade inefficiently, we can throw units out, we know we can lose them, we know that we can play good decent beefy units, knowing that even if they die, we can just slam Tomb World and they'll come back. Deploy up to 6 friendly infantry troops that died this game. Even if you've got a beginner collection, this card will win your matches. It'll be super powerful. I would just say, don't be too greedy. You don't always have to get 6, right? Even if there's only 4. The good news is when you look at the Tomb World card in the game, it actually tells you how many are in the graveyard, how many bodies it will bring back. So that's super useful. But this card is phenomenal. I'd go ahead and make that your number 1 craft, full stop. Number 2 craft, I would strongly suggest if you're going to do a control deck, is Imhotep. Now, Imhotep is a really powerful lord, and you'll notice it's the only other, next to Marnius Calgar, it's only the second one I'm recommending from the legendary choices. The extra 5 health, combined with his talent, which essentially does 1 damage, which is great in a control deck, giving that extra ping wherever you need it, but also healing 1, makes this guy essentially the beefiest, biggest tank of all the war bosses in the game, full stop, bar none. So Imhotep is really good if you want a game where you want to just last the game, drag it out, control the board, drain them of resources, drop Tomb World and win the game. Really powerful lord. I would strongly suggest that is your 2nd craft. Now then, when it comes to your 3rd craft, I think it comes down to a little bit of personal flavour, and I think it's between 3 cards. And these the other ones are all kind of like non-essential for me, but I do think these 3 cards are great. One is the Chronomancer. Chronomancer, a bit like the Orc Knob, same ability, that when you play this, it allows you to deploy other troops and give them flank on the turn they come on. The only thing is, it's a bit more expensive than the Orc Knob. It does have regeneration in a bigger body, so it's more likely to survive, but you can't reanimate this guy, so usually when you play him, what happens is your opponent gets rid of him immediately that turn, which means that to get value out of him, you kind of need to, unless you're going to bring him back through Tomb World, you kind of need to play him a little bit later in the game when you can play him with another unit, and at which point that does make him a bit slow. But that said, there's no doubt about it, he's a really good, even just as a 5-drop to just drop and be a threat and suck out valuable resources from your opponent, it's probably worth it just for that. So Chronomancer's pretty cool. The Necron Lord, similar in, thinking in terms of it's a great body to put down, it's a threat, your opponent's going to try and deal with it. If this guy lives, I mean, he runs away with the game and you usually win, right? He's Remnant, so he can be raised again. Great to have in the graveyard for our Tomb World. And he's got regeneration 2 as well, so he kind of has to be finished off with that big 8 health body, otherwise he's just going to keep on recovering. So I would say that this card is a really, really good craft, and I would say it's probably your 3rd choice over Chronomancer, but it's really a bit of that's a personal choice. I think it's whichever play style you prefer. Now, the only one that could contend with those for your 3rd choice is the Annihilation Command, and this card is very good, but it's only very good in specific decks. So mainly what I'm thinking about is the Scarab deck. If you're going to go more down the Scarab build, and if you're interested in what that deck looks like, it's a lot of fun. I've created a deck guide called, if you look in my videos, you can find a Necron Scarab tempo guide, and in that kind of deck, the Annihilation Command is brilliant because you're likely to have a full board of units, so giving +2 to melee and range is super powerful. But it's not great in a control deck, so it really, I would ask yourself, which kind of deck do you want to master and learn first? If you want to go down the Scarab, then make that your 3rd choice. If you want to go down more of a kind of control route, then probably you want Necron Lord or Chronomancer. Okay, so next up we've got Chaos, and you know, in Chaos I would say that you want to be looking at the Possessed Champion. This is a superb card. It's got really good stats for 4 mana. It's a flanking unit, and if you survive the strike, then you actually activate a free Dark Pact as well, which is great because obviously you can get a health boost from that, or a regeneration boost from that, or a camouflage effect. So you know, the fact that you can do that is really good. Also, when you're building the boards and you're trading, you can use this to trade with like a Spirit Stone or a Remnant from a Necrons, and that gives you a free Dark Pact as well without losing any health. So this is a really powerful card. Just to be honest, just a 4 energy, 5 attack, 5 health flanking unit. That's super powerful. So that is definitely a really, really good legendary choice. Now, the next one I would look at is probably the Dark Oratory. being able to give a Dark Pact to all friendly troops is really powerful. There's a lot of cards that synergize, obviously, in the Chaos faction that say things like, whenever a Dark Pact is given, or if a Dark Pact's given here, do damage, or if you do, you know, so there's lots of synergy, and being able, the challenge is being able to get bodies on board and then play the Dark Pacts out. But this, for 2 energy, will give everyone that's on the board a Dark Pact, and it has some good synergies with like Spawndom and things that put lots of bodies down on the board at once. So this is really powerful and really game changing. I think it's a great legendary. It would definitely be in my top 3, probably my number 2 pick. Now again, depending on the kind of build that you want to go with, I think this guy's really good as well. So I think that, I can't even pronounce it, I think that Ukris would be probably my 3rd one. It's another really beefy Chaos unit, mid-range. It's only 5 mana, so it's not too expensive. It's got good health, good stats, and again, the strike ability here is to give 2 Dark Pacts of Blood. So he's going to ramp up really quick. Obviously, if your opponent's got the removal, then you know, that's the downside. But playing this onto an empty board, for example, where you've been trading, I think it's difficult without them having hard removal to get rid of 6 health. So I think that's a pretty powerful card, and that's it. I think honestly, I wouldn't bother with Abaddon. I wouldn't bother with, I mean, this guy's one of the worst legendaries in the game. I mean, I just don't know why you'd ever bother. So I think for Chaos, we've covered the main ones. And then finally for Tyranids, let's have a look. So for Tyranids, I really like the Tyranid Prime. Why do I like the Tyranid Prime? He's only 4 mana, and a lot of the Tyranid power comes through the Synapse ability, right? So this guy comes with Synapse, and that means that anything that you put on him benefits the units adjacent. But in addition to the ability that you put on him, it also says that when a friendly unit triggers Swarm, give it +1 melee attack and +1 health. So you're getting the additional benefit, not just the buff that you're playing. And I think this guy is a good body to start with, right? For 4 mana, we get the 5 health, really good stats. This is an all-round really solid card. And the same can be said for the Broodlord, right? The Broodlord is stealth, so you can play this guy. He's got 6 health and he's in stealth, so he's going to survive, and that's really important. Why is it important? Because as we just said, Synapse is key to the Tyranids, and this guy has Synapse. So he's a really, if you're just losing your Synapse creatures and getting removed every time you put them down and get removed, the Broodlord is your man, right? Or your monster, because you can put him down and he's guaranteed to, you're going to have a Synapse there on the board. And then when you do that, it actually triggers the Synapse twice. So this guy can quickly start to develop that board for you. So I think they're, for me, 2 of my favourite ones. I wouldn't bother with a Swarmlord. I don't think it's as bad as Abaddon, but I definitely pick these over that. The other 2 that are a contender for slot for the 3rd one for me are probably the Biomorphologies. You can choose an effect and give it to all the troops in your hand. So that's quite nice if you happen to have a hand. It's a bit situational, but if you happen to have a hand with lots of units, giving the effect to them first before you play them on the board to be removed is really powerful, and it's a good anti-removal card. So I do think that's powerful, and I think my 3rd choice would be between that and the Ravenous Hunter. So the Ravenous Hunter gives Bloodthirst and +1 melee attack to a friendly unit this turn. So again, for 4 mana, what that does is it allows that unit to attack twice per turn. So if it's on a big unit, obviously that can help you to trade, and that helps you to swing the kind of tempo balance. But often the way you want to use this is as a finisher, right? So you've built up a pretty powerful unit. Let's say you've got something that's got like 8 attack, and then you play this on it, and then it's suddenly got 9 attack, and it can attack twice. So that's doing 18 damage, and then that's to enemy Warlord, game over. So it's a finisher. So if you're looking for something that's the equivalent of like Wailing Doom is in Eldar, for example, the Ravenous Hunter is your big finisher. I really like that. I would probably say that would be my 3rd choice, probably followed by Biomorphologies. So there we have it, guys. That is what I believe are the essential legendaries. Remember, it's really important to kind of try and identify the kind of deck that you want to play, that you're going to be really happy to kind of really learn, because legendaries don't come along that often. One thing to bear in mind, which I didn't know for a long time, is that if you play a premium draft campaign and get 12 wins, you will get a guaranteed legendary, but you don't know which race or which one you're going to get, but you will get a guaranteed legendary. So that's one way to sort of build up your legendaries. But either way, pick the deck that you're kind of aiming for, and I hope that my my priorities and preferences in what we've talked about today are going to really help. If you like this guide, then please make sure to hit the subscribe so you hear about future videos come up, and please like and comment. Tell me what you think, tell me what you're going to go for, and also if you disagree, if you've got a different opinion, that's great. Tell me why, I'd love to know. Let's get the conversation going down in the comments. Thanks very much guys, I'll see you in the next one.